So today we have one of my very favorite books, one of the first books that I read, which can be called as a classic translation. So usually all the other ones like Jane Austen's and other books are written in English. So this was the first one, which was a translated classic that I had read. And I felt so happy that I could revisit the book after all these years. Yes. So let's begin. Today I just thought there's a lot of topics, so I'll try and be as quick as I can. After maybe every two topics, we can pause the presentation and have a discussion and then come back and continue. So we're going to see a little bit of history about Leo Tolstoy, and a lot of what he writes in Anna Karenina has been an imitation of his own life experiences. We'll also be seeing a little bit of the power of his writing, and again, Anna Karenina is filled with allusions and allegories. So we'll see a little bit of them. And I'm going to read out a very famous letter to you, which uh, which is another, I think, something which might be very interesting for you, but something which is lesser known about him. And then finally, we just have a few discussion topics and some few of my favorite quotes. You can share yours too. So, a little history behind Anna Karenina. It was written when liberal reforms were initiated by the Emperor Alexander II of Russia. Uh, so, some of the reforms which he was uh, very interested in and which he brought about were the emancipation of serfs. So, serfs are people very similar to the slaves, if you want to compare it to that, but it's not exactly slavery. Basically these are people who had taken maybe extreme loans or something which they couldn't pay back, so they were got attached to the land, and they became a part of it's just like owning a property, so they became a part of the land. So they continue working on the land, their children continue working on the land, and when the land is sold, they also go along and they become start working for the new landlord also. Now, this was something, the emancipation of serfs was something a very important reform in this period. Then there was a rapid growth of industries, building of railroads, introduction of the local government system, which was something very new. And we also see Levin taking part in the local government and the debates and all that. There were a lot of military reforms, and there was a freer press also at this point of time. So all the writers of this period, in fact, this is called as the golden period of Russian literature. So during this period, all these writers had some very interesting views on these liberal reforms. And the various characters which we meet in Anna Karenina discuss about these reforms in depth, in fact. Um, Also, the writers of this period were famous for promoting a few things, one of which was communal living, and the second thing was emancipation of women. We also see conversations around these two topics in Anna Karenina, and the social transition from a rural agricultural economy to an urban industrial economy also was happening during this period, and this was something which Tolstoy just did not like. And he makes it clear at various points of time in the story, if that he doesn't really like this. And another thing that he did not like were the railroads. So trains do get a very bad reputation in Anna Karenina, and this could be one of the reasons, because he just doesn't like the railways. He felt that it was something being brought in by capitalistic Russia and something like a new revolution, and this is just taking people away from the traditions and simple living. The next thing was that another very interesting thing was Tolstoy's ideas and principles were a huge influence on Gandhiji, and Gandhiji and Tolstoy exchanged a lot of letters. So where Gandhiji tells Tolstoy that Tolstoy has been a huge inspiration to him about where communal living and protesting in a non-violent manner and letting go of false ideologies, whether it's in religion or even in other scientific ideologies also. So yeah. So a little bit of Tolstoy. He was born to a large noble family. He studied law in the university, but he left without completing it. And then he had this huge gambling debts, and to pay that off, he went and joined the army. And just at the time when he joined the army and became an officer, he started writing. He married Sophia, whom he was so much in love with, and he had 13 children. So, apart from fiction, he also wrote on education, spirituality, and politics. Um, but however, this book, as you know, I think it's written in 1870. But with every book and his with the every essay that he wrote, his ideas were very revolutionary and different. They were against the politics of that time. They were against religion. So of course, it put him head on against Russia's two most powerful entities. So the Tsarist government, they put him under police surveillance, and the Russian Orthodox Church, they excommunicated him. So this is what happened to him later on. Another very, very interesting thing about Anna Karenina is that it is actually inspired by a real incident. So Tolstoy was called by the police to identify and witness a woman who had committed suicide by falling in front of the train. So this lady was actually the mistress of Tolstoy's neighbor, and Tolstoy was asked to be a witness at the inquest. This incident, in fact, left a very deep imprint on him, and it disturbed him a lot. Till then, infidelity was dealt, very lightly in literature. Adultery was just seen as a form of comedy. Even in Anna Karenina itself, Oblonsky's example, it's not taken very seriously over there what he does. However, he wanted to change the narrative around adultery. And this is one of the main reasons why he wrote, Tolstoy wrote Anna Karenina. And this was, in fact, I think, one of the first novels where adultery is seen as a tragedy and how it could affect life. Also, the character Levin was modeled after Leo Tolstoy, whose first name was Lev. So many of Levin's feelings are actually Tolstoy's feelings also. So some of the things which we can see is the love for the countryside, and Levin also feels that the countryside is the real Russia and not the city. Tolstoy was also deeply in love with his wife, just like how Levin loved Kitty. But maybe it's a story for another day. But it's also said that Tolstoy and his wife had probably the most toughest marriage in literature, of in among all the authors who were, in the literary arena. In fact, he, after a point of time, he even runs away from his wife. So, okay, I think that's for another day. But as far as we are concerned, yeah, just like how Levin loved Kitty, Tolstoy also loved him. And the scene where Levin proposes to Kitty using his codes, it's said that Tolstoy also proposed to his wife Sophia in the very same manner. And Tolstoy was also very vigorous and zealous about working in the fields. He believed that the work of the bureaucrats was useless, and the real work was the work which is done in the farms and the countryside. Before we go to this power of Tolstoy's writing, let me stop the screen share, and maybe we can come together. And if you have any questions or any thoughts about whatever we've discussed till now, you can maybe raise your hand. I think that's possible, right? And we can share our thoughts. So, Mr. Shamal Rao, would you like to go first? Please unmute yourself.
What I found was actually, as you just said about Levin, normally I keep my identification away from the characters while reading a book. But this book was different and it was very immersive. You read actually, you forget your ears. Of all the characters, I was drawn to Levin and got identified with him. Maybe right or wrong, I don't know. I just have learned from you that it was in the form of the author himself. Maybe
Yes.
because of his grace, moralistic nature, or the
Mm.
love he had for Cathy and his brother Nikolai.
Mm.
Uh, and then his reformistic vision in bringing form acts and overall his idealism. That actually character drew me to him.
Mm.
Because there is another character I was very much drawn. That was of Verenka, that unmarried women actually.
Correct. Yes.
Those pages, I was reading this book through my own iPad actually. Whenever she was there, I must say actually the screen glowed in extra. I liked that. Her presence was brief but had impacted Cathy and to
Mm.
add me as well. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Tulika, would you like to share?
Yeah, actually, obviously, Levin was a very wonderful character. What I liked was that he was very self aware, and also he knew that the things that he was doing or the practices that he was trying to bring in, even the serfs themselves didn't like that much. They didn't really approve of it. They liked that. I liked how self aware he was. He knew exactly what he wanted, and he also knew who was going to view it in what manner. So I think
Correct.
that goes for Leo Tolstoy himself, how
Yes.
well he knew himself and what reaction he could get, which is why he
So
could write
actually,
from. Sorry.
correct. The scene which you mentioned, no, the same scene actually happened in Tolstoy's life. So
Okay.
in his own land, he tries to free the serfs, but
Hmm.
then they get worried. They're thinking that he's going to cheat them out of something. So they
Right.
oppose and they don't agree for the freedom.
Hmm. I think that's why that his understanding of the way people thought, that's why he could do different perspectives so well because he could really understand what each one was thinking. I really like that.
Correct. Ashish, would you like to share any points?
Yeah, sure. No, I liked your introduction because I've read some of Tolstoy's works, but I know little about him. So I was kind of reading like interesting facts about him and how, despite his writing routine, he kept up with his pen palship, and that's where, as you said, Gandhi and nonviolence and some of that connection happened. And then it also says that he was a vegetarian, which was kind of unexpected.
Oh,
And then
okay.
he had some vices. His weakness was cards, so he was an avid gambler. Uh, so interesting facts. I mean, Anna Karenina is one of my favorite books. I read it a long time back. I was trying to refresh by watching the TV remake. I
Correct.
haven't finished that, but that's also interesting. Of course, nothing like reading the unabridged book as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Hi, Percy.
Hi, am I
So,
audible?
yes, you're audible. There's a slight disturbance, but it's fine.
Yeah, so I also read Anna Karenina a while back, and I also saw the film that was made in the 1930s starring Greta Garbo.
Okay.
Of course, the film focuses more on Anna Karenina and the adultery, that aspect of it. Really, I mean, I don't think you would expect the 1930s that kind of film to get into agricultural reform, right?
Mm.
So it's like about half the book. But the character of Levin is definitely interesting. And I think early on, when we are introduced to Levin and Kitty, right, and we have Levin being pretty sure that Kitty will accept his proposal, and then she's fascinated by this Tom Vronsky, and that kind of the intersection, right, between the two storylines. So, and I think it's fascinating how he talks about how Kitty's appearance sort of changes, right? The second after one season or so, but Levin finds that he still loves her just the same. That was a very, I think, sort of uh, part of the love story that I think Tolstoy tries to bring about.
True,
So yeah, so thanks for the background information. I also did not know much about Tolstoy personally. Although I didn't know he had exchanged letters with Gandhi. And in fact, I remember seeing a book of peace essays. Okay, there's like literally peace essays written by him, which I believe was part of the foundation for Gandhi's doctrine of ahimsa.
Okay.
And the great question in that being, if I am a believer in non-violence, should I participate in a war that my country is attacked? Right? So that's a big question that he tries to deal with.
Okay.
So anyway, fascinating. Let's see how the rest of the discussion goes.
Sure. So I'll continue with the presentation. Okay. So one of the things, one of the episodes which you might also remember is when there is a fight between Dolly and Kitty. You know, it's actually not a fight. So Dolly tries to console Kitty when Vronsky has jilted her, and he tries to tell her, Dolly tries telling her sister that, don't get worried, it's okay, or something like that. And but Kitty gets so defensive because she feels very insulted about the whole thing. So she turns around and she tells Dolly, I'll never take a man who cheats me back again. And just when you think, oh God, this is such a terrible insult, and how are the sisters going to react, and what is going to happen to them? And in that 1 second, they just stop, break down, and start crying. And once again, everything is forgiven and they are happy together. Somehow I felt the scene was so strong and so well thought of and written that, like Tulika just said, he has this ability to get into anyone's head. And it's especially difficult for a male writer to write through feminine eyes. And I think Tolstoy does it very well. He's also, one interesting thing is that he's so particular about researching for his novel, and he's very careful to get everything factually correct. But still, it's said that Anna Karenina has one tiny mistake. He mentions the position of Venus in the sky during the shoot, I think, where Levin and Oblonsky go for a hunt together. So that time he mentions the position of Venus in the sky just to show that the sky is beautiful and all this stuff. And that time I think he says east or something, but it cannot be east as per the position, and he gets it wrong. And if you see most of the critics of whoever has reviewed or so this is one of the points which they point out, that he did this, which is, I would say, probably something really small. But yeah, so that's something very interesting. But apart from that, there's actually nothing which is, for a 1,000-page book, there's nothing which is factually incorrect, or any of the arguments or anything that he makes. Everything is well thought out of. And another interesting thing is that he's been so he has this capacity to analyze everyone's feelings, and at places he's also analyzing the feelings of the animals, so the horses and the dogs. So when Vronsky's horse is about to die, he you can really feel for the animal, and also Levin's dog, when it goes on the hunt, and suddenly it sees that Levin is interested in talking to Oblonsky and he's not concentrating on the hunt. So you suddenly have the dog's voice telling, come on, concentrate on the hunt. So Tolstoy really had that power. These were like few things which I just realized as I was reading. The scenes are so smooth, and the shift, you just cannot feel that there's no jarring shift between one scene to another. Even when we shift between the points of view of Oblonsky, Lenin, Kitty, and Anna, you never feel that difference. The story moves on so smoothly. And the other biggest thing about his writing is the inner monologue. Every character has these scenes where they think to themselves, and they wonder about things happening to them and what they feel. He does it so well and so smoothly that you don't feel, it doesn't feel jarring to read it. It feels very uh, right. And also, it helps us in understanding of each character very, very well. You can also see how the character changes over a period of time. Like even with Karenin, like you can see how he feels hurt in the beginning, and then he feels angry on Anna, and then he gets into the sense of forgiving her, once again slipping back into the feeling of the wronged man. So that entire growth, the shift in him is really very well done. Of course, the most famous scene is the Anna's talking to herself just before committing her suicide, just before she jumps in front of the train. And the scene literally chills you. But another scene which equally chilled me, which I don't know, I didn't realize in the first reading, but I realized when I read it this time, was when Vronsky also attempts suicide in between the novel because of Anna. And at that point of time too, there is an inner monologue that he goes through. He's so confused, he's doing this, doing that, he doesn't even realize that he's suddenly shot himself. He's not even shot himself properly, he's not dead, but he's had an accident. I think one of the power of Tolstoy's writing is that he hides these disturbing parts very, very um, beautifully within the even within the inner monologue. You never know till the end. Like even when Vronsky is shot himself, till the last second, you don't know that he's actually going to shoot himself. You just see that he's going through that confusion. And I still remember with the first time when I read Anna Karenina, and I never knew she's going to jump in front of the train. So when I read it, I just stopped breathing. For a second, I didn't expect that. So it's said that this is something really special to Tolstoy's writing, and this wasn't the case with many other Russian, novelists of that period. So this was something very special and particular to his writing. Okay, so this is a quote by Henry James about Anna Karenina. So he says that not just Anna Karenina, any novel by Tolstoy. So he says a novel by Tolstoy was a monster harnessed to this great subject, all human life, as an elephant might be harnessed not to a carriage, but to a coach house. Yeah. So that felt really funny to read. Um, Another point which I wanted to make was this very interesting essay which I read. It's let me just pick up the name of the author. I'm sorry, I've forgotten it. So there is this author called Isaiah Berlin. I hope I'm pronouncing it correct. And he's written this essay called Hedgehog and Fox. And he says all writers in the world can be divided into two parts. So either they are hedgehogs or they are foxes. So a fox knows many things, but a hedgehog is considered that he knows only one thing. So he just digs deep. So that's his work. So according to him in the essay, he says the greatest fox of all times has been Shakespeare, because he's been able to get into the minds of a variety of characters. He is able to explore various different subjects, aspects of human life, and every part of humanity. And each character that he creates is also individual and unique, which is something really special when it comes to Shakespeare. But when it comes to authors like Dante or Dostoevsky, he says they are all the greatest hedgehogs because they had one particular topic in which they went very deep into. So, for example, he says that central salvation, the for Dostoevsky was Dante was that central salvation can be achieved, and all the work that they wrote, all their novels, all their entire literature from their pen illuminated this concept. So this is what was there. So in the essay, what he says about Tolstoy is that Tolstoy is probably one of the writers who had this wide array of characters, and in War and Peace, which was uh, stunning, and it had an it felt like the entire human life and humanity was brought out in that book. However, Tolstoy was not convinced with it. He wanted to have a central idea in his book. So it said that he is one of the greatest foxes who tried the hardest to be a hedgehog. And in fact, it's said that he wrote Anna Karenina because he wanted to concentrate on only one particular subject, and he felt that he had done it. But it's not true, because again in Anna Karenina, I think we have a wide range of emotions and a wide variety of characters, and also various different points of views and ideas presented. So this is a very interesting essay. Once again, just to remind you of the name of the essay, you can maybe Google for it. It's called Hedgehog and Foxes. Okay, so coming back to Anna Karenina, one of the specialities of this book is that it has so many allusions and allegories. So certain things mentioned actually mean differently, and certain symbols, it's certain things are actually symbolism of something else. So in fact, Nabokov, in fact, he calls Anna Karenina as a novel about a horse race. He says the relationship between Vronsky and Frou-Frou, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, his horse Frou-Frou, is the same as that between Vronsky and Anna. So Frou-Frou is, his horse is very sensitive, very high strung. It has to be handled with a very light hand. One wrong move can ruin the horse. And that's exactly what happens. In a fraction of a second, Vronsky loses the horse, and later he ends up losing Anna also in the similar manner. Another thing is we see Vronsky as this amateur artist, but who doesn't end up completing Anna's portrait. Again, this is said that it is to show that just like how he is an amateur artist, he's amateur in human relationships too. He doesn't have the maturity necessary to have a proper relationship, and that he didn't really touch Anna's soul. So, sorry, I think there's some mistake here. I think these 2 points have come from there. Yeah. Okay, so another interesting thing is that Tolstoy had this feeling that the countryside is real Russia, and that that farming and all, being with nature is the best part of life. So if you see the characters, whoever are in touch in nature, they seem to be more happier. And one more thing to consider here is that hunting is also in Tolstoy's time considered as being with nature, though it gets a bad rep now because of animal rights and other things. But at that point of time, it wasn't considered anything negative, and it was considered as something, a beautiful feeling of being with nature. Okay, so this is another very, very interesting thing. So in the end, Vronsky goes to fight in the Balkan War with a toothache. Again, here the toothaches, it's said that it symbolizes the painful memories that will travel with him and which he cannot escape. Now, the Balkan War is, so Tolstoy ends with that, so he ends with the Balkan War, the novel. Now, he was very skeptical about the policy of Russia in trying to help the Slavs in Balkan, because Tolstoy felt that the reality was that Russia is only trying to extend its power. And he wrote about this in the epilogue of the novel. Now, this is something very, politically explosive thing to mention, that Russia is only wanting to extend its power and not really wanting to help out. So what happens is the editor decides to remove it, and he just writes a short summary of the epilogue and puts it over there. And he says that the novel is very lengthy. He has to give a reason to Tolstoy. Tolstoy is not going to accept that this is politically this and all that. So he says the novel is lengthy. So Tolstoy gets extremely angry about this, and he writes a letter to his editor. So this is the famous letter, which is translated into English for our purpose. So he says, "Dear editor, with the usual honesty and sincerity of an editor, you said you will not publish the epilogue because the novel was getting too long. It will be interesting to know why you decided to publish all 6 parts of my novel, which were very long, but not my short epilogue. For the benefit of your readers who will be upset by its length, let me summarize. There was once a woman called Anna Karenina who lived in Petersburg. She was angry about many things, fell in love with Count Vronsky, and threw herself under the train. Sincerely yours, Tolstoy." So this letter was found among his papers much later, I think probably after his death. So this just says that he did not send it because he did not want to spoil his image with his editor, and he always was a very goody author to all of them. And but however, it's very people were angry that he didn't send the letter, because it's very paradoxical, as he was always for free speech and honesty, and he said that we must be open in our feelings, we must share what we feel. So they were like, what is this? How come you said all that but you didn't send it? So before we go to the discussion topics, once again, I'll just quickly come back here. And yes, if anybody has anything to share, you can please put your hands up or ask or unmute yourselves. Hi, Tulika, you want to share anything?
Oh God, I forgot, but I had so many things to say. I'll wait on.
No problem, no problem.
I can.
Yes,
maybe,
Ashish.
I was speaking with the mute on.
Please do.
So I think, yeah, right from the very first sentence, that all unhappy and happy families and the commonality, I think Tolstoy starts engaging the readers, and then the allegories come pretty early on in the novel. I think the first one that I noticed was the train itself, uh, where the characters meet, and not just the train, but also I think the porter incident where he's caught with the bag, and then Anna sees him under the train, and then she has the dream coming on. So I think that's a very powerful medium to me, of engaging. So despite having, I mean, I read it quite early in my, I think, few decades back, first time. And even then it was engaging. I did not know much about Russia. The names were complicated, but I think the way he introduces his characters along with the context is what I think helped me complete the book that early on. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, Percy. Would you like to add something?
Hi, yeah. So it's really interesting. I really like that bit you shared about the parallels between the horse race and the Vronsky relationship. Like, in a certain fact, had never occurred to me, but when it's put that way, you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Whether it was intentional, it probably was. But the part of how that unfinished portrait, that is such a brilliant way that Tolstoy showed us exactly what kind of a person Vronsky is.
Hmm.
and he has this pattern of starting things
Correct.
with a lot of action and ultimately not being able to follow through on that. And whatever was the lesson that Tolstoy was trying to bring forth, I think a lot of it does come out in that. And yes, of course, that horse race with him getting injured. At that moment, I think as a reader, first time you don't know what's going to happen next. You're genuinely thinking like, what is going to happen if Vronsky dies now? And well, of course he doesn't. So, but at that moment, it's like a lot of things are still on the table, right? And I think that and the portrait part was really well done. I think there's also some portions where it talks about how Vronsky gets, although he is grown up and has his own career, he still sort of depends on, I think, his family's money, right?
Correct. He does.
Which,
He does.
which draws an interesting contrast to Levin, whose property is not profitable, but he's still trying to figure out how to do what's best for it. So I think that's another interesting way that sort of brings out the contrast between those two main characters. That's that from me for now. Yeah.
Thank you.
I like to go. I just want to say one thing. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tulika, please tell me.
The most complicated character which I just couldn't understand was Vronsky, because he has this grand passion for Anna, but he doesn't understand her at all. As in, there's one passage where she's saying, I'll go away with you. And then she says, what will I do about my son? And then he says he couldn't understand why she's talking about her son. That's the one main thing that Anna feels sad about right till the end.
Correct.
But even when she's looking at his pictures, she has to hide it from Vronsky. So there was that was unfathomable. As in, he leaves everything and he goes off with her, but he doesn't take the trouble to even understand what is bothering her, what is so close to her heart. That was weird. And what did Tolstoy have to do with Vronsky's teeth? God, how many times he mentions him, no? Perfect teeth, perfect teeth. Did you notice that?
Yes.
That blew me away. Why would he? So many times he says this perfect teeth. Oh God, I was like,
and then he ends with a toothache. And then he ends up with a toothache.
Why? That was bizarre. But otherwise, most of the characters I could identify with because of that inner dialogue, except with the exception of Vronsky. Everybody else I could understand their motivations and their thoughts, but he was beyond me. So that's it from me.
I was wondering, was that on purpose? And why did Tolstoy not reveal that much about Vronsky? I mean, it's a bit unusual now that you mention other characters are so relatable, but Vronsky is more shallow compared to the others.
I think his character is also shallow in a way. That's what I felt. He's not sticking to anything. He takes money from his mother. Lives a very lavish lifestyle. Maybe he wanted to show that. That's what I feel, at least. That maybe that's why Tolstoy brought him out like that. And also to add to what Tulika said, I think maybe this also has to do something with the feeling that women were like property for the men at that point of time. So women and the children were also all owned by the man. So maybe they felt, why is she worried about it? It's something to do with it's her husband's. So it's not anything to do with her. Maybe they thought that. I'm not sure.
I think Tolstoy was a little unfair to Vronsky because there's Oblonsky also doing. He just makes him so. He makes him likable. As in, you don't end up disliking, although he's having his affairs and he has this ballet dancer and the governess and everything, but you don't end up disliking him.
Exactly.
But Vronsky, I think, except one conversation which he has with Dolly, that was the only part that I could actually like when he says that you must ask her to push for the divorce. That is the only heartfelt thing I felt that Vronsky said. Otherwise, he appeared very, very shallow. He just did what he wanted to do without bothering about the consequences, and somehow, I think Tolstoy was a little unfair.
In fact, I read a very interesting essay about Anna Karenina, where it said that the book went through some 6 or 7 drafts with Tolstoy, which was common with most of Tolstoy's novels. And the initial drafts were extremely unfair to Anna. And they showed her as this absolutely evil, impure woman. And they showed Karenin in such a good light. He was this holy person who was so when you read those initial drafts, you just cannot feel anything for Anna, but at the same time you would feel so much for Karenin and you would really sympathize with him. But maybe that was not the intention of Tolstoy. Did not want to really write the book for that reason, so maybe he went back and edited it and changed it a lot, so to bring out both
the book that you have, sorry, the copy that you have, I read that same edition. It says he wanted to show that as in Anna, he wanted to show it as a tragedy, not, which is why what you mentioned, right?
Correct.
He wanted people to empathize with her, so I guess that is why he would have revised it.
True. And also, one more thing I heard was Tolstoy himself was against, he did not really approve of it. He was against a woman committing adultery. So it took some effort on his part to make her likable.
I can totally believe it, because Levin, going by what Levin was, and if Tolstoy was Levin, he was so idealistic.
Correct.
As in, he wants things proper and everything is correct. There are no grays. There's a black and there's a white. So I can imagine him not being very in favor of adultery. So
yeah. So in fact, as soon as you said Levin and Tolstoy, I remembered one more point which I forgot to tell you. So just like how Levin gives a journal to Kitty and asks her to read about all the sins which he committed before marriage. Yes. So the very same thing was done by Tolstoy too. So he forced, in fact, Sophia that she must read his diaries, immediately after marriage. So, which was something that Sophia didn't like. She didn't want to read it, but he forced her that she must read it.
May I?
Yes, please.
As I find, madam, actually there are 3 love stories running alongside in this novel. One you just said, the first one was of Anna, who in pursuit of true and honest love enters into an immoral, we can call it, relationship with Vronsky and ends up in ignominy. The second one is of Dolly, whose love actually forgives a dishonest, irresponsible, pleasure-seeking husband, Stefan. The third one, perhaps in my view, is the perfect one, is the love of Kitty for her husband, Levin. So I found 3 love stories running parallel, side by side. Thank you.
True.
I don't think Dolly really loved Oblonsky. It was more for the children and the family and to keep the family together. It didn't seem like it was a partnership, but she was definitely not happy with the way Oblonsky was.
Correct.
And she mostly stays together for the children and keep the family together.
So that way, I think Russian society was very unfair at that point of time, So if a husband and wife split, the children would remain definitely with the husband. Even if the husband is at fault, if he has committed adultery or whatever it would be, he would, the children will definitely be with him. And all the wife's properties also go to him. So if she leaves him, she has to come out as a penniless person without her children. There is no other hope. Anna slightly reminds her of that when she comes to patch them up. She does make that point. She tells, "What will you do? How are you going to manage? It's not possible." So, so Anna had Vronsky. So she had that feeling that even if I divorce him, it's fine. I can marry Vronsky. He's ready to marry me. But it was tricky because I think that was the reason why she was this, I want a divorce, I don't want a divorce kind of a thing with Karenin. Because initially when Karenin does offer it, she just walks off with Vronsky and doesn't take the divorce. And later she wants it, but then Karenin doesn't give it to her. So the forest land which Oblonsky, I think he sells, that's also, I think it's Dolly's land, right? If I'm not
Yes,
wrong.
yes.
Yeah, it's
Right.
Dolly's land. But if suppose Dolly had walked out before that, whatever he sells it for or whatever he does, it's still going to remain with the, Oblonsky. He's not by law required to give her anything. I think those are also some of the reasons that though she disliked him, maybe she just stuck on because there's no hope otherwise,
In a way, she was forgiving. Okay,
Yeah, so we must think that.
water may be her compulsion.
Okay, so we'll proceed with the presentation. Okay, so I just took up a couple of discussion points this time. So one of them is, we've already been speaking about it. So it's adultery and how, Tolstoy differentiates between the adultery committed by men and that by women. And also here in, more than religion or more than the law, there is a lot of societal norms which play a role um, when it comes to adultery in the higher Russian society at that time. So is it ever morally acceptable to commit adultery? While there are not really very clear answers given by Tolstoy, but it is said that Tolstoy's own feelings towards is that it's not acceptable for a woman. It is okay for a man, but to have his own relationships, which was it's said that's what is Tolstoy's own feelings and his way of life. But even otherwise, you can clearly see that there is a double standards over there. So in Russian society, it was considered women are objects and men are people. So you own the woman, you own her property, you own the children which she gives you. And if she walks away with nothing. And like I was just mentioning, the initial drafts versus the later drafts reveal that Tolstoy's perception was also like this. So Anna as an evil woman was softened in his earlier in the later drafts, and also Karenin as this nice, hard-working husband who's so loyal and so goody-goody was also changed later on. I think Tolstoy also struggled with his own thoughts when he was writing the book. Now, adultery as a social sin. So Tolstoy exposes the artifice and vanity of the 19th century Russian aristocratic society. So Anna's adultery is seen more as a social sin, not really a religious one. Though Karenin keeps on talking about, that this is your, you've gone against religion and all these things he says. But the one thing that he fears the most is what society is going to think of him. So Tolstoy felt that the urban world, is full of scandal and deception and gossip. Again, Tolstoy's perception is that the rural world, the countryside, is real Russia. It's the wonderful place, and the urban world is full of all this scandal and all this stuff. And one more thing in Russian society, and I think in today's society too, in many ways, is that it's the women who police the women. So we seen in the scene at the theater where the lady, creates a scene because Anna has come out in public boldly, and it's hated by the people there, and there's a huge scene created not by the men there but by the women there. So in many ways in the Russian urban world, it was okay to break the law, but it was against, as long as you didn't break the society's rule. And as we saw, Karenin was more worried about his image and his social standing. then his broken heart. And of course, his heart was broken. Of course, I really felt for him in many scenes. He's so lost, and he does love Anna a lot, and he is upset by, what she's done to him. But all that he is able to think about and show out and, wonder about and try to repair is not his broken heart, but his social image and what society thinks of him. Another discussion point which I wanted to bring out was the family life. So there are, as Shamil Rao just pointed out, so there are three main family units here, which is Oblonsky and Dolly and Levin and Kitty and Anna and Karenin. And we'll also see about jealousy. So among these three men, if you see, Oblonsky is one who makes this statement. He says women become old and they are like stale roles, and you need a fresh one. And Levin in response tells Oblonsky, I'm talking about love, you're talking about appetite. So I think this one exchange between them clearly shows what they are, what kind of a people they are. Again, but still, in my personal opinion, despite all this, both Oblonsky also thought of women as property, and in some ways, Levin also felt the same. He was wanting complete ownership of Kitty. So Kitty should only, immediately after marriage, he wonders why is she even bothered about household chores and, cooking and all these things. Why is she interested in all these things? She should only be interested in me. I am all that matters. But on the other hand, I felt Karenin actually gave a lot of freedom to Anna. She could go where she wanted, do whatever she liked. She could speak to men. He did not treat her like a property. In fact, even later when some people, speak against her, also he comes in her defense. So I feel he really loved her. And when she completely, broke his heart, he says these words, I felt, which was so impactful. I thank God the curse of love is lifted from me. Okay, another part of it is there's a lot of jealousy which is mentioned. And it's not very clear whether, Tolstoy was trying to say jealousy is a sign of true love, or I'm not very sure. Or is he trying to say that jealousy happens and that it's not something very pleasant and as a part of family life? Because Karenin, of course, he has all the reason to feel, angry or jealous. It's past jealous, in fact, but he keeps stressing that he's not jealous. And on the other hand, Levin is jealous of his guest, and he doesn't care showing that he is jealous, and he just throws the man out of his house. Kitty, she's jealous of Levin and how he appreciates Anna, and she shows it. She cries and she has a big fight with him, and the fight goes on till 3 in the night and all this stuff. What is actually, I wasn't very clear what really Tolstoy was trying to say. So if any of you had some ideas on this, please, share it with me. Because what does he try to say? Does he try to say that it's a sign of true love? Or is he trying to say that jealousy is something that shouldn't be a part of marriage life? Or is he trying to say that it's one of the curses of, being in a relationship, of being in a marriage, and it just needs to be boom? Also, one more point which I think Tolstoy has tried to bring out here is that usually you have this feeling that having a family is restrictive for freedom. And I think here he tries to say that when Anna broke her family ties, she lost her freedom too. She couldn't move around in society. She couldn't meet people. She was, completely removed. And that, in fact, that I think was the main reason, all the jealousy for, over Vronsky and whatever happened, all those things happened because she had nothing else to occupy her mind, or no one else to whom she could share anything. All her focus was only on Vronsky, and that was because all her, freedom to move around in society was lost. But on the other hand, having a good family life can give a person a lot of autonomy, not only to move around in society, but also to pursue what they like, what they want to do. Like Levin could explore his new ideas, his thoughts. He could, try out new things on the farm. And having a supportive marriage and the love of Kitty, I think it boosted his confidence. It gave him a kind of anchor he could hold on to. And I think this is what Tolstoy tries to say through this entire novel, that love can be actually freeing, and family ties could be more freeing than breaking those ties. I just have a few quotes here. And of course, the most famous first line of a novel: all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And this is another quote which I really liked. And the son, just like the husband, produced in Anna a feeling akin to disappointment. She had imagined him better than he was in reality. She had to descend to reality to enjoy him as he was. Anna always lives in her dream. So she has this kind of thought process that life with Vronsky is going to be great. Or I don't know. I at least I felt that still she met Vronsky and fell in love with him. She didn't really hate Kiernan. She was quite happy with him. Maybe they didn't have a passionate relationship, but it seemed like they had a content relationship only. Maybe she wasn't completely satisfied, or she wasn't completely happy being his wife. But I don't know. I think somewhere, because Vronsky came into the picture, she was disappointed in her husband. After that, the normal life seemed like a disappointment to her. So when she transfers those same feelings to her son, it was quite shocking to read this. Another, very, very touching scene was this one, where Karenin says, I cannot forgive, I do not want to, and I consider it unjust. I did everything for that woman, and she trampled everything in the mud that is so unsuitable to her. I'm not a wicked man. I have never hated anyone, but I hate her with all the strength of my soul, and I cannot even forgive her because I hate her so much for all the evil she has done to me. I think somewhere all this hatred has happened only because he loved her so much. If he was indifferent to her, or if he did not care about her, obviously he's not going to feel so much about it and feel so hurt in his soul. This is another thing which Anna says to Vronsky. Respect was invented to cover the empty place where love should be. But if you don't love me, it would be better to say so. This was this was the scene where whatever he says, she would mistake it. And one such place, when he mentions the word respect, immediately she just gets so wild and she says these words. Again, I am not sure where is the exact quote. I couldn't find the exact quote, so I just wrote about it. This particular sentence stuck with me. So where Tolstoy, I don't get the exact words, I don't remember now, where he says, Karenin always tries teaching his son, but he's so strict with his son that his son doesn't learn. All the more his son feels intimidated that he shuts down. And Karenin gets even more harder and harsher on him. So there's a place where Tolstoy says the only way a person learns is with the presence of love. And I think that's a very beautiful quote, probably something which we should share with all the teachers. Yeah, so these are the few places where I referred to make this presentation. Coming back, so please do share any of your thoughts relating to.
Shall I go?
Yeah, sure, Tulika.
Okay, one, I do not agree. Karenin and Anna were in love. I think Karenin didn't love Anna. Let me tell you why. I think he's more worried about his image in the society. I think that's why he hates her, because the one thing he wants in life is to do well in his diplomatic whatever he's doing at his work. He's a workaholic, and that remains his first love. He doesn't hate Anna, but he doesn't love her. And ditto for Anna. Like before she meets Vronsky, I don't think she has even given it thought that there needs to be love in a marriage. She's just happy as this perfect society woman, and she's charming and everybody likes her, and she just revels in that feeling without wondering whether whether thinking about love at all, like whether there needs to be in love. But when she falls in love with Vronsky, then she can see all his shortcomings, and which is why that quote about her son, no? Because that she's newly in love, so even her son doesn't make her that happy as she would have been. So because she is in this airy fairy world, she's fallen in love. So that I somehow could not convince myself that Karenin really loved her. He doesn't even bother that she's talking to Vronsky and everybody's frowning upon it. He tells her, I don't mind it, but I saw the others commenting upon it, so you should not. And that thing, I don't know, maybe it's not true. That's how he was not a bad man, but just that's just the way he was. I don't think he really thought about the need for the most important thing in his life, according to me, was his position in society, and that he should progress in his work. So I somehow couldn't see, which is why he was not jealous. He didn't show any feeling towards Anna, and every time she would cover up that situation, she'd go along with it. He never pushed the fact that why you doing this and why you with Vronsky, and that's what makes Anna angry, because she can see that he doesn't really love me. I that's what I thought. That was somehow I couldn't see any love. And the jealousy, again, I think it was a dynamic between the couples. But the couples who were really, really in love, I think what you said, that he thought jealousy was an inherent part of a loving relationship. Not nice, but it is there. And where there is no love, there was no jealousy. So I think that's how I saw it.
I also
I
feel
want to see what others.
in the sense, actually, the Anna's contented life with Alex is really confounding. Otherwise, what drives her actually, that irrationality when she's taken over by passion, and that ends up in adultery and her own self-destruction. I'm not sure. Perhaps it was because of her, I don't know whether I can call it unhappy married life with Alexei, who appeared to be dry, stiff, as Madam has just said, unsuitable, career-oriented, or very bureaucratic in his approach. And added to it, he was elder to her by 20 years. Actually.
20 years, yeah. That is it.
I'm not sure for her passion and driving herself to love Vronsky, was it a relentless pursuit on the part of Vronsky, who drew her into the vortex of his love? So these are the things I wanted to share. Actually, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know. I really cannot comment, because usually that is what people say, that but I felt very sad for him. And somehow I felt that, there was a love over there, but even acknowledging that love, he was not even ready to acknowledge what he felt. He was so obsessed with his position and what the society thinks of me. Every time he sees someone smiling, he's like, oh, they are laughing at me. So
that feeling takes over
with Anna
any
was more like,
emotion.
Yes,
okay,
please tell.
please.
No, go ahead, sir.
And I hear more actually in the sense, actually, it was not with heart, but it was with mind. That too is the relationship. If he's emotionally, some things would have been different. He was not emotionally attached to her. And even in the case when he wanted to draft the divorce papers and other things, he was very systematic and logical. Which sentence I use, which word I use, what language I will put, where I will go, all those things. So I found he was more of a mental relationship he was having with Anna than emotional, which normally is expected between wife and husband. That's what I felt. Thank you.
Correct.
Yes, Tulika.
No, same. I'm just
no, like what you said, maybe
cold and mechanical.
Correct. And maybe that feeling of his, safeguarding his position has taken over all other, feelings of love or whatever. True. Uh, Percy, would you like to add anything?
Mm, no, I think they covered it quite well. I was just thinking about that point. Dave Karenin love his wife, and it's been a while since I read it, and I'm sure if I read it again, I might find something different or new in the text. But at the time, it remains this sort of ambiguous point to me.
Mhm.
Uh, as you rightly pointed out, there are moments when it seems as if, in his way, in the way that a Russian aristocrat of the whatever late 19th century would be able to love his wife with pride. But I think, however you think about Karenin's feelings, Anna Karenina's thought process, you captured quite well. That during their marriage, I don't think she really gave a thought to whether she is expected to feel love.
Hmm.
And then when this handsome, dashing, captain comes into her orbit, she is drawn to him. And I don't know if that was Tolstoy doing it deliberately when he shows that, like, when he shows that Vronsky is not all that maybe Anna wants him to be, right?
Hmm.
And
Correct.
that's a very fascinating insight. That he's saying that here's this Anna Karenina who I have made by the fifth or sixth draft. I have made her this very compelling character. I have made her, I mean, 120 years from when the book was written, we are still talking about Anna Karenina is one of those great female figures of literature in a period where there weren't a lot of great female characters. And who did he match her up with? Someone who we keep thinking, like our whole discussion has been around how Vronsky fell short of, so it was very definitely not a love story there. I
Hmm.
think it was a story of things. I mean, I would compare and contrast with Middlemarch, if you ever, if you ever take that up ever, as a interesting look at how this kind of relationship works out. Adultery, as you rightly pointed out, was not very much dealt with, but
Mhm.
a companion reading for Anna Karenina should be Middlemarch and possibly Jude the Obscure. I
Okay.
think these would be worth looking into and then reflecting on how these three authors, obviously one of them being a woman herself, dealt
Mhm.
with the subject. So let's
Mhm.
think about that. But otherwise, yes, I mean, great discussion, great book, and it still leaves us with questions after so many years.
True, it does. Ashish, would you like to add anything? Uh, okay. I think Ashish is maybe Ashish is not there. I'm not sure. Okay. So if there's nothing less, then maybe we'll wrap it up. So we are reading Fahrenheit for the next month. Percy, I wish we could read Middlemarch, but again, it's one another huge, humongous novel. Now, if I'm right, it's another 1,000 words, right? 1,000 pages, I mean.
No, I don't think it's that big, but it's a very
Oh,
I can tell you that the way she's written it, it's not the length, it's sentence construction that really takes a lot of time to wrap your head around.
oh, okay.
Comparatively, Tolstoy writing is simple, right?
Yeah. No, it's very, very beautifully written, actually. Um, at that point of time when I read it, I think the first time 15 years ago, I wasn't really very well read or anything. I would say maybe I read a lot of Agatha Christie and classics also. I had read a few, but nothing as in depth as Anna Karenina. But I found it really simple, easy, and it was finishable. It was definitely I could go through the book, and so definitely Tolstoy's writing is good.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Tolstoy's books are lengthy, but the writing itself is quite smooth or simple.
Mhm.
But with Middlemarch and I think with George Eliot's work in general, there is a sort of difficulty level or a sort of uh, barrier, to really getting into her work. But obviously, once you cross it, you're reading up on so great minds of it. Yeah, there is a barrier.
True. But in Russian literature itself, it seems before Tolstoy, many others, when they translated, they found it much easier. But Tolstoy didn't make translation so easy. So it's said that he wrote in the, I don't know, maybe dialects and things which are really pure forms of Russian. And so it was a challenge for anyone who was trying to translate Tolstoy's works. So Sarit, would you like to add something? I saw that you had mentioned something in the chat.
Yeah, it's quite a long time since I read too. It's like 20 years or more when I first and last read this book. It was a Soviet edition that I read, and the translation was by Margaret something. And it was a wonderful translation. I thought nobody else could match it, but I'm sure there are several editions now. The discussion on the different translations and their merits can be found in the Guardian article, which I have just shared the link. Very interesting read on the whole. I had to, in those days, we didn't have the time as a student, but then, I got hurt and for 10 days I was in bed. So that was when I had finished reading those 2 volumes of this novel. Yeah, very interesting experience. Back to you, Archana.
Frankly, this is my first read, madam. This is the first time I read this book. And I find actually several messages, actually I'm failing to grasp them. And I had to reread a few pages in the first round itself. And I think I strongly feel that I missed the abundance and richness of the book in my first read. I propose to read again, and I thank our Sarath for the link that he has given. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I also felt, that the first time that I read it, I really did not understand the book in this depth or appreciate it in how much I appreciated it this time. In fact, I still remember that the first time I read, I felt that Tolstoy had written the first, I would say 1/3 of the book. He wrote about Anna, and then he just went off, somewhere else, and he started writing about so many other different things. And then he remembered, oh, I'm supposed to finish Anna's story. So he came back and completed it.
Yes. It's not an easy read. A very long, lengthy book, actually.
Very lengthy book.
900 pages, roughly. But I have to thank you. You brought a wonderful book for discussion this time.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And Tulika also, I think this was her second read.
Yeah.
So she also, I remember she also shared that.
But the last bit, after Anna dies, that really tried my patience, where Levin and his faith.
Correct.
I just wanted the book to finish. After Anna dies, I ran out of patience. Like, that was hard.
True. I think that Vronsky's scene after Anna dies was relevant.
Correct.
But everything else was so much of fluff, really not necessary.
Levin struggled with his faith and God, and
I
that
know.
was painful.
Even in the middle of the book also, did you feel that, Tulika? Maybe you didn't feel it this time. Maybe you would have felt it the first time. This time, I really didn't feel so difficult to go through it. But the first time, I felt that middle portion where there's so much of, Levin's thought process and him wondering about philosophy and politics and everything was painful.
I just wanted I wanted to know the story, what's happening in the first read. You just want what happens.
Correct.
So, second time you can take your time and think about the philosophy and
true. Also that scene where I don't know, I didn't really feel many like only her the one scene which I really remember that impacted me so much was her suicide, because I never expected that.
Correct.
And just in the first read that completely shocked me. But this time, the one thing which sent me into tears was the scene where she comes to meet her son. Without anyone
Yeah,
seeing,
she walks in.
walks
Yeah.
in, and then she hugs in, they cry
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah.
And along with her, I was also crying over here, and Sarit
that
was
was-
pretty shocked of that.
Yeah, that was a very touching scene.
Yeah, it was really something, I don't know. Again, this scene never affected me that time. Maybe I didn't have any kids so at that time. So
Exactly. I think that makes a difference. Ditto for me. I don't even
Yeah.
remember that scene
correct.
from my
correct.
first read.
Yeah.
But this time, yeah,
It really felt that. And in fact, I read about this. I watched a famous lecture on great courses. There are 2 lectures on Anna Karenina over there. And so in one of the places, the person who is giving the lecturer mentioned the same portion, and he said that he broke down every time he read it, though he's read that scene so many times. And I was like, wow, okay, so it does that to men too, not just me.
Sure, sure.
yeah, sure.
Okay, so if there's nothing more, then should we wrap it up? Ashish, are you there? Do you want to add something? I think Ashish is logged off, or I don't know if he's lost the connection or something. Okay.
I got answer to one of my questions from your PowerPoint presentation. May I share?
Sure, please do.
Because I was thinking actually, he has referred to Moscow, St. Petersburg, and everything. The story. But I wanted to know about 19th century actually, how those places were there. Some of a description or that we never find. Perhaps he was prejudicial. That's what you also showed to cities of Tolstoy. Whether his description of these rural areas, locations, he has very liberally described them in a very
Correct.
captivating manner.
Correct,
That is what
correct.
I found.
Mhm.
Nowhere he refers only Petersburg, Moscow, that's all. But he
Mhm.
never elaborates a description.
Right.
Thank you. He was
Yeah, that's the point.
prejudicial.
Yes,
That
yes.
was a point.
He was a complete lover of the countryside, and
I
Yeah.
got it clarified.
yes.
Mhm.
Okay. So thank you so much. Thanks for coming,
Thank you, ma'am.
everybody.
This is fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Tulika. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.